Okay, so today what we're going to do is learn how to do very simple Vcarve inlays. I'm using a system I call the 3-2-1. Basically, the math is quite simple, and we will outline everything in this video. By the time you're done here, you should be able to just go to your CNC machine and do your perfect inlay. So we're going to start, we'll set up our job site here. I'm going to do a single-sided job, 5 by 5 by 3/4 of an inch thick. I'm going to have my 0 position on the top and my datum in the center. Say OK. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to have to go get a graphic, and I find that some of the best graphics I have found are the ones that are they're called tribal art. And these are quite incredible pieces that are very easy to inlay. So I'm going to go over here, find where I have that. Let's go to right there. And here's one I picked out. So as you can see, it's very detailed, black and white. That's going to make turning this into vectors very simple. Right now we have this centered. I'm going to make sure it's centered. Well, we'll center it after we do the vectors. So now that we've brought in the bitmap, and I'll show you up here in the layers, it'll show a bitmap layer. I can turn that off, and that'll turn that bitmap off. We now have to convert that to vectors. So when you come over here, there's this what looks like a little bird. You click on that, and we're going to be able to turn that bitmap into vectors. Now this is going to be very simple, because if there was a bunch of stuff here, some of it's going to be dark and some of it's going to be light. We got to pick that first. So if we went way over to the light side, you could see all those dots that we have over in here. We don't want that. We want that all filled in. So as I slide it to the right, if I go too far, now it's getting noise in the lines. But if I go right about here in the middle, and you can play with this, that looks good. I'm going to go down here and say preview, and there's my vector line. So I'm going to say apply, and then I will close that. Then we go up here to our layers, and I'm going to turn off the bitmap, and now we have just the drawing here. If we zoom in close, you're going to see that we have certain items here that we really don't need. So I'm going to ungroup. If I click that one right there, I'm going to delete that. And then we're going to go see if we get any more of those. Yep, there's a couple right there, like we don't need that one. Cut. We don't need those two. We're going to cut those. And here we got a couple more. And if we really zoom in, see, this would bring up an error. I'm going to leave this one to show you what kind of error it's going to bring up. But let's go ahead and get rid of this one. Okay, so now we've got those cut. Let's select all this, and we're going to go over here, and we're going to go to Vcarve, and I'm going to set my flat depth to 0.3. Now this could be 0.2, it could be 0.2.5, but just to make it easy on this 3-2-1, I'm going to make this 3, and it'll make the math really pop out, and you'll see how simple it is. So the start depth is 0, and the flat depth is 3. I'm using a 90-degree V-bit, and this is going to be the female. And so if I hit calculate, See, I get this right here, that there may be vectors that overlap and so on. So if I click Go to Vector Validator, it's going to, and we do a search. See that little square popped up? If I zoom in, that was that one we left. I'm going to close that. And it was showing that it was an overlap. So I'm going to pick that one and get rid of that. Now I'm going to come back down. I'm going to regroup this. Group objects. And just to make sure that we're not going to screw up later, I'm going to move these to a new layer called Female Vcarve. And say OK, and we're going to make that the active layer. So now when I come over and do the calculate, it did the calculate. I'm going to close it. I'm going to go over here and preview it. And we'll preview the selective. And now we have our female drawing. So now we've got our female drawing done, and we have taken that over and made the toolpath and so on that we needed. So now what I want to do is I want to select this female, and I want to go down here and I want to say copy to layer male Vcarve. So now if I go up here, if I shut that off and come up here and turn that on, now we're in the male. But the first thing we got to do with this male is select it, and now we want to flip it. And you have to flip it because when you're doing these and you do the mirror, when you're gluing them together, you're flipping it over. So that's why it has to be the exact opposite of what's below. So we'll go over here, flip horizontally, and now we have the male. Let's make sure we got that active. Yeah, we're in the male and we're active. So when we go to do the male Vcarve, we need to put a frame around the outside edge. Now, you got two ways. You could come over here and start here and make this extra box. And what that box will let us do is it'll carve all this area out here away, and it'll carve everything in between these away, so that this will then flip into the female version. You would have to take this over to the bandsaw, because we're gonna bring this down, lower, so that this is proud. But this is a small enough piece. What I am going to do, I'm going to get rid of this. I'll delete it. I'm going to come up here, and I'm just going to make one slightly bigger than the board. And I'll say apply and close. So we go over to our toolpaths and everything. I'm going to close this out. So now we want to do the male Vcarve. We click here. The start depth is going to be 2/3 of what the female flat depth was. So the flat depth was 3 for the female. So 2/3 of 3, of course, is 0.2. And the flat depth is 1/3, or 0.1. We're going to use a 90-degree V-bit, but we got a lot of stuff we got to get rid of here, so we're going to use a clearance tool. So we click that. Let's select a 1/4 inch end mill. We're going to do an offset, and we come down here and we got to select it before we calculate it. And now let's calculate. And this is going to do two toolpaths. It's going to do the Vcarve, and it's going to do the clearing. So as you can see, it's going to clear out all of these items and everything. So let's go over here, and you can see the two. We got a Vcarve clear and a Vcarve number 2. So if I'll take those toolpaths off. Let's go over here and we'll reset the preview. So if I do the clearing first, which I would, we'll preview that. And I probably should have extended that over here just a little bit more, because then I'm going to have to cut that on the bandsaw. So let's go do that. Let's close this out. And this will be a good little thing to know. We come back over here. We'll go into our 2D view. We're going to click on the and we're going to just extend that out a little bit, and we're going to extend this side out. Oh, that's just moving it though. Well, let's go up to the box. We're going to make it 5.2 and 5.2. And we're going to have that centered on 0, 0, and apply. Now we got an edge all the way around. Close that. Now we can go back over. Let's redo our Vcarve. Once again, we were at 2 and 1, 90-degree V-bit. Actually, we wanted a 60-degree bit. 60-degree V-bit. Oh no, it was a 90-degree. Okay. Select that. We're going to, for a clearance tool, we're using the 1/4" end mill. We come down here, we calculate, and we're going to go take a look at that. Let's take the toolpath off. We're going to reset the preview. Now when we preview the clearing, see, we did everything but these little corners, and we can just knock those off. But actually, when I do this part here, it's probably going to do it anyhow. I'll preview that. It's going to do the Vcarve, and there it went up in the corners and knocked those corners down. And now we have this, you can see it's very proud, it sticks up, and that's going to go over into the female quite readily. Okay, before we send our toolpaths, we're going to do a little bit of housekeeping here. This first one here, we're going to rename that Vcarve 1 female. Okay, the second one here, we're going to call this the male. Clearing 0.25 end mill. And then this one, we're going to call this one male V-bit 90 degree 0.5. Okay, so I'm going to close this, and now we're going to go and let's save the female Vcarve 1. I've got the appropriate post processor, and it's going to be a V-bit 90 degree, and we're going to save the toolpath, And this is, I'm going to save it under this inlay video. And there's my first toolpath. I'll save that. Now we're going to save the mill clearing. And we got mill clearing. We're going to save it over here. We're going to save that one. And now we're saving the final one. Save that toolpath. And that's the 90 degree. We'll save that. So now we have everything saved. And now we should be ready to go and mill this on the CNC. So let's go over there and take a look at that. Okay, we're going to put our board down. We're going to be doing the female V-carve. This technique of using masking tape and the CA glue works really well. Just put tape on there. I'm going to put tape right here. You wouldn't think this would hold as good as it does, but it does. Put a little glue right here. Spray the other side. And we just pop it down, and in a matter of a second, it is completely secure. Okay, so I'm going to be marking the center line. There's the center of my wood. And now I'm going to bring this over. I put a laser crosshair in my machine, so I can just bring that right over to the spot. And get that nailed right in there. And then I just go hit my laser XY button I added to Mark III. And now that's centered directly over that spot. And then all we got to do is zero out the Z-axis. I want to check one thing. I want to go to 0. Yep, we're good. And just like that, we have our female part cut. And now we got to cut the male part. Okay, now we're going to set up our male piece. Once again, we got to get it. We're going to put the laser crosshairs right on that. Maybe if I shut that off, you can see that better. And then I fine tune it in there. And that's good right there. Now you see, here's where the point is, but here's where the bit is. When I run that macro, now it's dead center right over the top. And all we got left to do is auto 0. And we're ready to go. Normally I would have the dust shoe, but just so you're able to watch it, I will do it without the dust shoe. Now we got to put our other bit back in, the 90-degree V-bit. Okay, now we're going to zero out our 90-degree V-bit, and we'll finish this up. As you can see, it doesn't take too long to do a V-carve inlay. Probably one of the shorter time frames of anything we do. So let's see what we got. So now we have our, okay, the way we clean that up, and that's it, we're good. Now we'll take this over to the workbench and glue it up. Okay, so before we glue this up, the one thing we want to do, and the reason we had to flip that drawing, because you see, by having it flipped, when we flip it over, then it'll fit in there. And what you do before you glue it, you want this to, see, like it doesn't look like it's going in, but you start moving it around and you'll find that spot, like right there, it just dropped right in. So all your inlay is going to be just perfect. So we're going to put some glue in here. I get it in there everywhere, and then I just rub the excess over to the other part. And then we know we got enough glue. Okay. So I'm going to put this piece on here. There's where it's locked in. I'm going to get myself a C-clamp. These C-clamps that have a little bit of a throw where you can get in on stuff, and really works well for these inlays because I can put very good pressure on that. So once that's dry, we'll take it to the bandsaw, cut it apart. And when you've seen us do the mill part, where we went like from the original 3 down to the 2 and the 1 spacing over here, that gave us that little space in between these 2 boards. So when I take it to the bandsaw, it's going to cut and not touch the good board at all. And if this was a bigger inlay that wouldn't fit in the bandsaw, then you can mount this back down to the CNC and just mill the top off. So next we'll go to the bandsaw after this sets up. Okay, this should be set up enough. And now we're going to take it to the bandsaw, and then there's that groove I was telling you about that you can see in the wood. That way you got enough room for the bandsaw blade to go through without damaging your good side. So we're here at the bandsaw, and I'm going to set this up so that doesn't touch my good piece, and it leaves just enough to maybe do a little sanding, and we are going to be good. So now we got to take it and sand it to get it to where it's down to this part of the wood. Okay, so now we're ready to sand. So I've got the majority of it off. Now I'll take it over to the regular hand sander. Now we're going to do kind of the final sanding. Perfect inlay, very detailed. Every one of those spots is perfectly filled, no gaps. I mean, it just don't get any easier than this. And for the final, we will put a drop of oil on there. And this is how we do inlays. And depending on the type of woods and, how big or how small you want it, but it's very detailed. It works every time. And it's just not difficult. I will have a sheet that shows how to do all this as well. But between the video and our cheat sheet, you should be able to be doing your inlays first time. And if you do one, please message us back and show us what you've done. Thank you. Have a good evening.